It's time for some more Yellow Turbans Abridged. Last time we were trashing Shi Hui, except for the one point where they ambushed us. We still won, but it was a bit of a challenge. We were also trashing the Kingdom of Wu, just taking tons of their territory and conquering our way to their capital, where we fought a big decisive battle with Sun Ce and a load of elite troops that we eventually won. By taking the capital, Zhang Kai has now become one of the many emperors in a surprise twist. Even though we've really beat down the Kingdom of Wu, we are going to want to beat them down some more because they remain quite powerful, and as I mentioned at the end of the last part, in order to win we need to not lose this territory, so we can't all just walk off somewhere else. Need to really hammer home the fact that the Kingdom of Wu needs to leave us alone by just taking as much stuff as possible. We also get a declaration of war from the Kingdom of Song, so I guess that makes them our next victory target. They've really put their neck out for that one. But yes, we'll have to do a lot of manoeuvring and general finishing off of the south before we attend to these wars in the north. Here was something quite cheeky. Gong Langshu is in coalition with the Kingdom of Song, or she invited him in just after the Kingdom of Song declared war on me specifically. So that's a very hostile act, I thought. Gong Langshu almost disappeared as a faction, but seems to have rebounded by actually capturing some of the Han Empire territory that I had just walked past earlier in my campaign east. And now I'm thinking, well, we're probably going to have to deal with her once and for all, because she's clearly planning something against us. In the meantime, we've got a whole load of random Kingdom of Wu territory that's all undefended, all over the place, so we're just going to be rampaging across the map and taking everything we can. Here we're taking the Sangwu lumberyard, we just took some farms or something to the north. That just leaves the city in this commandery to the southeast, which is currently the capital of the Kingdom of Wu, so we definitely want to go and take that as well before we try to end the war, just to really humiliate them. I'm also going after the Duchy of Gong, so now we're up north with my one terrible army I actually have up here, and I discovered the Duchy of Gong's faction leader. I don't remember what her name is, but she's here with a half-dead army in this territory. Maybe they just took it from someone. There's a big garrison, so the enemy actually have the advantage there. We'll just go for the siege, and because the enemy have the advantage, they're almost certainly going to sally. Now with Zhang Kai, I wasn't sure what to do with him, but I realised that his movement range allows me to attack Gong Langshu right now, and on top of this whole coalition thing, I thought maybe we should just get on with this and go for her immediately to try and clear things up down here. It does cause border gore as well, having another faction inside our faction down here. Same thing with Huang Shi, really. So we declare war. We had no treaties or anything. We end up declaring war against the coalition that she's part of. And the long and short of that is that one other faction joins the war, some faction on the east coast that we haven't seen so far. We'll see if they ever actually come and interfere. In the meantime, we can go for Gong Langshu right now, of course, as I said. So Zhang Kai starts moving. I actually halt him on the border so we can take a look at their settlement. And we indeed see that Gong Langshu herself is there with legendary strategist Zhuge Liang. So are we in trouble here? I decided to set an ambush on the road, because I figured now we're at war, that army might just move out and try and go somewhere, and it might happen to walk past the ambush, so there's a chance there. We'll leave them to it. Got some other business across the realm to conclude. Here, Shi Hui needs to be finished off. We found their last little stronghold out on this island, had to siege them down a couple of turns, and they actually didn't sally in a revolutionary twist. So got some attrition on them, and once they were weak enough, we can take the auto-resolve. There's a succession, and then the destruction of the faction right away. So Shi Hui, the Kingdom of Wu's vassal, is gone, and our war in this area is complete. It's just Han Empire territory nearby, which right now we're not at war with. Up near Jiangsha, you may remember last time we had this whole situation where the enemy were besieging us, and I'd put some men outside the town, men from an army that had just been killed, where they could respawn. And now we're going to complete this whole story because we can counterattack with our respawned troops, and actually we have a small advantage. Now I was planning to fight this battle, but as you can see I'm not allowed to withdraw. What I'd normally do is do a quick save here, withdraw so that I can open the main menu again, and then go film some other replays first. In this case, I'm not allowed to withdraw from this attack for some reason. I'll just cancel the attack, so I have to auto-resolve in order to be able to open the menu. And then when I did auto-resolve, I pretty much realised, wait a minute, we don't really need to fight this battle because the result of the auto-resolve is just fine. It's a Pyrrhic victory, but doesn't matter. Once this army is dead, we can just carry on. We'll replenish by the time we reach the edge of our own territory. So as a result, I ended up skipping that battle. Basically realised myself that I was forgetting the Pyrrhic victory rule. We now just need to finish off the survivors of that army. Not much going to happen there. And with that, Zhengsha is now once again secured, and this army is going to head north. We'll ignore the Wu territory to the southeast and go help with the Duchy of Zhong. There is another Wu army down in the south near Yujiang that we'll have to deal with soon enough. But first, we are actually going to go into a battle because that siege I set up against the Duchy of Zhong's faction leader now turns into a sally. Their first army is in terrible condition, as you can see, loads of really small units, but because our army is really bad and the enemy has a sizable garrison, they do just about have the advantage on us here. It's a very dreary day for a battle, as you can see. The enemy have a strange mixed formation where they've left some of their units behind, trailing in a column. It's not just because those are the reinforcements, they've got most of their reinforcements right at the front, so it wasn't the usual AI glitch in that regard. I'm not quite sure what's going on. But here we go with the fight. I've put my men in a tree line so that the fact the enemy have lots of archers won't be such a problem. We have quite a lot of archers as well, which will help us out initially. The enemy have tons of unshielded spears, so we'll rain arrows on them. And in theory, the enemy's return fire won't be that effective because we are standing in that tree line. The enemy aren't very interested in having a ranged battle though, they just charge right on in for a melee fight. And in this case, this could be to the enemy's advantage because our troops at the front are the tier 1 trash units and they're at low level, so this is just about the worst melee line we can put out there. And while the enemy are just using tons of militia and generic units like spear warriors, they are better than our guys in terms of stats, so that straight line melee won't really be to our advantage. We need to make a flank attack. Our flanking group is currently distracted by some enemy cav. We'll deal with them and then head on in. The issue we have making a rear attack or a flank attack like this is that all of those units that were trailing behind the enemy army are now basically here as we arrive. And they've got lots of archers, as you can see, so it's hard for us to really disable the enemy's back lines because we're getting hit by arrows and crossbow bolts all over the place, and the enemy's officers are here, and just generally we can't instantly negate their ranged advantage with just one unit attacking as I am now. I've only got one cav unit to work with, so I'm going to have to wait for infantry to catch up to really make this rear attack, which is very unreliable against archers. But somehow our general is putting in a heroic performance, taking on the enemy's officers all at the same time while being showered with arrows from all directions and surviving, basically not dying, which was a big risk. And now I can arrive with some trash units like our peasants to try and lock these archers down, while our cav will just quit the melee to go and make enemies skirmish away, try and get the archers into melee as well and get some kills. So things start to go okay there. On the front line, I'm trying to use some of my arrows to thin out the enemy's spears, but it actually worked less effectively than I thought it would, maybe because our archers are low level. I think your level does change the power of your bow for some reason. In the centre, our arrows do take out most of the enemy's officers, so they've lost their faction leader already in this battle and their strategist is nearly gone. However, we've lost the centre of our formation, just because, as I said, our melee skills aren't that good. And now the enemy are starting to fold to attack both of our flanks, and they are going to get some flank attacks on us here. At least the enemy lost quite a few men, especially to our barrage of arrows. So both sides are pretty much wrecked when it comes to melee at the front. And at the back, we're gaining the advantage. The enemy's archers have been scattered or are just being chased off the map by infinitely skirmishing them away, so things are going alright. I am having to use my archers in melee to maintain the stability of the front line. But that's okay actually, because not only do we have loads of archers, but they have a stamina advantage on our exhausted enemy. So charging in with these full units of archers actually has a devastating effect on the remaining enemy units. We clear up our left flank, then we move on to the centre, and we're able to kill the enemy strategist hanging around. That will help out. Then, of course, we move on to the right flank, where most of the enemy's melee infantry were still fighting, and this huge swarm of yellow turban archers, along with the return of our cav, now pushes most of these troops away, and finally things will let up. We almost lost our whole main line, but yes, these archers are very numerous and aren't that bad in melee, especially when they're on fresh stamina compared to exhausted stamina. So we do clear everything out, we get a chain route. The battle continues though because they had one bodyguard from an unbreakable unit hanging around. So we had to go on for a bit longer. Eventually we come to this point. It was a Pyrrhic victory. We lost half our men, which pretty much comes down to losing most of the melee troops and having lots of our archers be alive. So now the army's really unbalanced. But of course, turn or two later, that won't matter. The enemy lost their faction leader and pretty much the whole army and some of the garrison in the settlement there as well. That means at the start of our turn, we'll just slap a quick auto-resolve, and there we go, these farmlands have been captured. Also killed another faction leader from the Duchy of Zhong there, so they've gone through two very quickly. Probably going to forget who it is, but basically the Duchy of Zhong is probably feeling pretty bad right now about the fact they declared war on us. Here, by the way, is Pingyuan. That's our current target. That's what we need to do in this campaign, go take that place. Although we'll need to wait for the rest of our armies to show up before we can really make a push. Those other armies are busy laying the beat down on Wu, of course. Here's a random capture we got in Yujiang. This is a bit risky actually, because you'll see we've captured a big column going out into Wu's territory, and there is actually a Wu army standing behind us. I just completely ignored them. I'm just going to keep taking territory. My hope is to actually peace out of the war at some point, like to take a load and get a really devastating peace deal that will keep Wu down. The thing is, Wu's still on maybe, and that means I have to concede something in order to end the war. Wu does not consider themselves to be losing, despite having lost half their territory and a few faction leaders so far. So I don't know how the AI decides how a war's going, but clearly it's not optimal. They do have a move they can make against us, as we see. The army that I was ignoring does attack one of the territories in my awkward Yujiang column. The issue they're going to have is that it's a town, and as we've seen, towns are surprisingly easy to defend because the entrances are close together. So we'll take a little look at this. You can see in this live footage what I'm concerned about. I just want to kill their elite archers before they blow us up. So I'm focusing on that and just blocking all of the other entrances to get the enemy killed as they come in. They do actually start capturing the towers at a couple of the entrances, which is dangerous. But by the time they get to that point, the towers have already wiped out tons of units. Here on the western approach, pretty much everything's dead, and we can finish them off even without the towers. Here in the south, I managed to retake the towers that the enemy took off us, and now this group is going to be in trouble as we just push in with everything. And in the north, there's not very much left either. They have taken the towers, but by the time they did that, we'd already taken out two of the officers and most of the troops in the area, so we can just grind our way through the enemy's remaining exhausted troops. I was going to fall back to the center, thinking we might actually lose a load of units, but look at the balance bar here. The enemy just suddenly gives up and goes from having a distinct advantage to being absolutely defeated. And now, I'm not going to end the battle, because as they fall back, they're going to fall back really slowly past the towers. So I'm just going to sit here and make sure the officers die, like this guy. Wait till he goes. Now we can end the battle, guaranteed. We've denied the enemy an officer. Very cheeky, a heroic victory for us in the end. These towns are so easy to defend, it's just delightful. It seems like an exploit. You should not upgrade to city. Cities are way harder to defend in comparison. So there you go, the Wu army is just trashed and we just lost some garrison that doesn't matter. Now back to stealing territory. Here I am taking Wuling from the Kingdom of Wu. This is the territory in between the two bits that Gongland Shu has, so now that's ours. The army down in Yujiang is going to continue ignoring the Wu presence in the area to go north, but there is actually another Wu army right there, so I set up an ambush on the border crossing there to see if they'll walk into it. Further north in Runan, on the edge of the Duchy of Zhong, I'm stealing this iron mine. It's very heavily defended because it's a high level, so its garrison is quite good, but it's not quite good enough to resist a nice trash stack auto-resolve, and we do take the place. Now moving on, we see a hint of an army from the Kingdom of Song up in the north, so maybe we'll have to actually fight them soon. And then, annoyingly, that army we just destroyed in Yujiang comes to do the same attack again. We have a smaller garrison this time because many of our units died in the last fight, but of course their army is also much smaller. Half the units it has are on the verge of death. They did all attack through one gate or one entrance, which was a good idea because that minimizes the total number of towers we're attacking them with. But our mostly archer-based force still had an easy time taking the enemy out as they came in. So really this attack did not go very well for the enemy, and now let's skip over to them being all dead. As you might imagine, that did not work for them at all, especially if their first attack didn't. Then, that ambush I mentioned at Poyang nearby does go off. That's quite handy. I didn't really expect them to actually come through, but yes, here they are getting ambushed. This is a particularly juicy ambush because they have trebuchets in the army, and I almost went down to fight it just to have the fun of really sticking it to those trebuchets by ambushing them. But there is no point, so we're going to auto-resolve that in the end, so we'll skip over that. And while it doesn't look like it here, I am standing in my own territory. There we go, I teleported back. So the losses we take there will be immediately reversed by the fact we'll get a turn's replenishment after that battle. Now back to Runan up north. I had an army besieging the main city there, which was undefended. Now the siege is over, we auto-resolve and move on in as you might expect. I've got 2 stacks on this front line who are going to continue pursuing attacks against the Duchy of Gong until they finally give up. So far they still don't want peace with us. At Poyang again, we move on to the siege, and I just wanted you to look at my army in the bottom left. You couldn't tell that they just fought a battle that was only a close victory, can you? Replenishment is completely OP. You do not have to play the game, which is great because at this stage in the game I'm just outraged it's still making me play it and not just saying I win. Now back to the Gong Shu thing. As you might remember, I was trying to ambush her, but she just sat there for many turns, and so did I didn't bother to attack. And the reason is because I knew I had another army on the way, and finally that army is here, so now I have 2 stacks. And with that, we can safely attack, and actually that's just an easy auto-resolve for us. So goodbye to Gong Shu, our long-time enemy. Zhuge Liang, who was also in that army, survives the battle. However, we can't recruit him, unfortunately. The only thing we haven't unlocked to be a normal faction is the ability to actually get new characters. So, Zhuge Liang's going to have to die, simply because that way no one else gets him. He's a high-level legendary character, and that's the end of him. So the faction Gong Shu is taken over by Liu Chou, and actually I thought I would be able to destroy their faction here, because the other territory they have at the other end of Wuling is also attacked by another army, some more trash that I've raised to just run in and take the town. But there's no message saying that the faction has been destroyed, and a bit later we'll see they actually do have more territory right on the other side of the map, left over from Liu Bei's days I expect. There's some Liu Bei territory that's descended down to this Liu Chou somewhere off in the top right, so we couldn't quite take them out. But in general, look at this map. We have most of the country under our control, the borders are looking very nice at the moment. Our empire is surely on the verge of conquering all of China, and as I said, I'm just outraged it won't just say, you win, because we've basically won at this point. We've now got an army down at Sangwu City, so we can capture that. That's good stuff. The capital of Wu is now ours, and we'll have to find another new one. The Kingdom of Song does attack that farm that we stole from the Duchy of Zhong earlier, and I didn't get my army back there in time. So they're just going to have it, and now my army will at least be able to sit on the road into our territory. The mountain makes a choke point, so we're kind of safe with our defences there. We've got some more invasions coming in though. The Duchy of Zhong sent troops into Chen a little bit further south, and then south of that we see 2 stacks come in from that faction off to the east that declared war on us at some point, so they are actually going to bother fighting us, which is a shame. I hoped they would just ignore us, as many of our enemies often do. We've also got some bad news, in that we've had some deaths by natural causes. A couple of officers died, and because 2 died at once and I only had 1 guy in the court, I'm actually going to have to sacrifice a load of expensive high-tier units as well at the same time. That really sucks, that whole system where the men disappear if the officer can't be replaced. So that's that. We'll just have to throw some crappy ones in there instead later on. Let's keep going. I've got an army on the edge of the Duchy of Zhong, and it moves forward to take some farmland from them. We're just trading farmland all over the place by the looks of things. So we take that, and then to the south I'm also going to be taking Poyang, that city I besieged earlier. Now those 2 captures are going to come in very useful in particular in a second, as you'll see. I came here to the diplomacy screen, and I've been negotiating for peace with all the other factions constantly all the time. But I finally realised something. I can actually vassalize the Duchy of Zhong because they're not that against it. Like, the amount of things I have to get them to agree to peace is about the same amount of things I have to give to get vassalization as well. And I ended up with this deal. I'm going to give them back that farmland I just took from them, but in exchange they have to surrender everything else to me. That's a pretty good deal, and like that they just become my vassal. That's an amazing ending to the war. We've just made a whole load of progress. The diplomacy situation there is complicated. We'll look at the overall situation in a second, because actually it inspired me to try and do the same thing with Wu. Wu were less willing to go in for this, they are a bigger faction, but with some food and some random bric-a-brac as bribes, and giving them back Po Yang, that other place I just took, we can get them as a vassal as well. So all of a sudden things have really turned around here. We just vassalized like half the map. Thank you very much, and giving up those 2 territories is nothing really, because they were both in commanderies that we don't control at all. So there we go, looking at the overall map, the light green is our new vassalized territory. We do pretty much have everything under our control at this stage. Just have to go up into that little corner there and take the 2 faction capitals to technically finish the game. So that will be what we focus on from now on. It is actually going to take a relatively long time to do, but what I hope is that I can just power through and give you a really quick summary of everything up to then, because I doubt anything too interesting will happen, and thus make next time the final part in this series.